How's it going, everyone? It's Avi from Weather Sponge 5000, and today we're going to talk about our next few winter storms that could move through the United States and determine the chance that certain areas of the Northeast could experience accumulating snowfall. So let's begin by taking a look at the latest initialization of the GFS model. So we clearly see that there's going to be at least a couple of troughs that are going to move through the general area of the Great Lakes as well as the Northeast. If we were to move a little bit further back with the forecast, you're going to see that there's this trough that's going to move through into the Midwest and through the Great Lakes. So this first trough should move through right around tomorrow on Tuesday, but most of the snow is going to be just north of the United States-Canadian border. But move fast forwarding all the way to our main potential concern that could bring quite a bit of snowfall to many portions of the Great Lakes and Northeast. This would be the trough that would occur by this weekend on Saturday, March 1st. So we do see that there is a pretty large area of heavier snowfall with moderate snowfall embedded with it. And we see that this eventually moves into the Northeast and does bring quite a bit of snowfall to the interior Northeast more specifically. As of right now, it seems like most of the snowfall is just to the north of the Interstate 95 corridor cities, such as Boston and New York City and Philadelphia. And based on what the computer models have been stating over the past several runs, it's been very persistent on that idea. I know some people up along the East Coast and Northeast might be hoping for maybe one last bit of snowfall before we approach the springtime. But it's looking more likely that this is mainly going to impact the interior Northeast as well as the northern Great Lakes. We can't rule out any possibilities just yet. We're still 120 hours out from this low pressure system moving into the Northeast. But based on what we've been seeing with the past several runs, it seems more likely that this will mainly impact the interior Northeast, but still should be quite it could have that potential of being a significant snowstorm for those in the interior Northeast, even if this doesn't necessarily dump the heaviest amount of snow, because we do see it isn't the most powerful type low pressure system. It is mainly just your typical Alberta Clipper. I will say it is a little bit stronger than your typical Alberta Clipper, but that isn't saying that much because Alberta Clippers, whether they're stronger or weaker, tend to be the more weaker type snowstorms we'd see in the Midwest and Northeast, but still certainly something you need to keep in mind by the time we approach this weekend. We see the snowfall approaches Friday night and into eventually Saturday and extending all the way into Sunday morning for some in New England. Now, in case you're wondering how much snowfall the GFS model is forecasting when it comes to this specific snowstorm, I think it's better to take a look at the 24-hour snowfall because it gives a better indication of how much snowfall you should receive from this specific snowstorm. Because if we were to take a look at the total snowfall accumulation, that would combine our next winter storm that would happen Thursday, which isn't very representative of how much snowfall you should expect from this specific snowstorm. So taking a look at the 24-hour snowfall accumulation forecast, this should mainly bring a large area of 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, while in the higher elevations, especially right up along the coast of Lake Ontario, you could expect more than that, probably more like 6 to 10 inches of snowfall, and I'd say localized areas where you receive over 10 inches of snow. And then for the northern Great Lakes, the GFS model is fairly confident this should bring a large area of 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, while for the Northeast, it will weaken just a bit when it comes to heavier snow bands based on this latest run. So we should expect more of an area of 3 to 6 inches. This impacts cities like Burlington, Vermont, into New Hampshire, pretty much the entirety of Maine. Should expect the general area of maybe 3 to 6 inches of snow. This includes Portland, Maine. You definitely need to keep this in mind. Bangor, Maine. You need to keep this in mind. Buffalo as well. You should expect 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. And then Albany, it's going to be a little bit of a tougher forecast. You might get some rain mixing in, but I'd say you should expect a general area area of maybe 1 to 3 inches of snowfall over Albany, and then for northern Michigan and Wisconsin and into northern Minnesota, like I said, you should expect a large area of 6 to 10 inches of snow. So that could be quite significant for some. So definitely pay very close attention to your local forecast. Or I shouldn't say 6 to 10 inches. I meant to say more like 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, but still definitely keep this in mind throughout the northern Great Lakes. However, there is uncertainty with the forecast, because if we were to take a look at what the European model is stating at around the same time period, the thing that the European model is forecasting is that it's expecting the slow pressure system to move a little bit further northward, which would mean that pretty much most of the northern Midwest would miss out on the heaviest snowfall, where mainly northern Michigan maybe gets involved with right around 1 to 3 inches of snowfall, but we see the bulk of the snowfall is going to be just to the north of you guys, and same goes for northeast. While you still do receive snowfall out of the European model scenario, you see the bulk of the snowfall is just north of the United States border. So the key thing we're going to need to pay close attention to, like I was talking about in my previous video, is how strong this ridge is. And the thing that the European model is forecasting is that it's expecting a weaker ridge, which would mean that that we're less likely going to see a stronger northerly flow that would help push the slow pressure system far south enough to bring the snowfall further southward. But if we were to take a look at the GFS model at around the same time period, so let's take a look at that. It's showing me the 0Z run. It's releasing right now, but here's the 18Z run. So moving at around the same time period as where the European model was at, you're going to see that the ridge is noticeably stronger, as well as this low that's located right over eastern Canada is noticeably stronger, which enhances the northerly flow and forces this low pressure system further southward to bring that snowfall further southward and the heavier snowfall further southward. So the key thing we're going to need to pay close attention to is how strong this ridge is, as well as how strong this low pressure system will end up being, because that will in turn determine how strong the northerly flow will be. And you're probably wondering when would be the best time we'll find out that answer. I wouldn't say we'll get a good answer until later during the week. I'll say the Thursday time frame, because that's when we'll really get to see how strong this ridge is right over the Pacific Northwest, as well as how strong this low pressure system will be right over eastern Canada. So definitely stay tuned. I'll say about Wednesday we should get a very certain forecast for you guys. It is likely that that the northern Great Lakes region, as well as the interior Northeast, will experience accumulating snowfall. The question remains, how far south will that snowfall move and how heavy exactly it'll be, because if, like I said, if the European model scenario ends up being more correct, then it would miss out on the heaviest snowfall, where we'd mainly be relegated to maybe 1 to 3 inches of snowfall at least the extreme northern portions of Northeast and the Midwest. So definitely keep that in mind. And like I said, in terms of a chance that this snowfall could move further southward and impact the more populated areas of the Northeast, I unfortunately think that that's going to be a little bit less likely at this point. Although we're still 5 days out, it seems like the computer model has been very persistent on just mainly bringing the snowfall at best to the interior Northeast. So I wouldn't hold your breath necessarily for the Interstate 95 corridor cities when it comes to that possibility of snowfall. But again, don't completely rule out that possibility, but I'll say it's less likely than not at this point. In terms of other snow events we're keeping an eye on for the United States, we will have a weaker trough that should move in later during this week, during the weekday. So continuing to move forward with the forecast, like I said, we will have this small trough, maybe bringing isolated snow showers to the interior Northeast. Not much to worry about outside of, let's say, if you're in the higher elevations of these states. So at least keep in mind of maybe an inch of snowfall at best. So just keep that in mind if you commute around those areas. And then we have another trough, which we've been talking about over the past few videos, and the possibility this could develop into a significant winter storm. At this point, it seems less likely it'll be significant, but it still should dump a decent amount of snowfall over many areas of the interior Northeast, especially if you're right up along the shore of the Great Lakes, such as Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. This is where you should expect the most snowfall, and it could be heavy in certain areas, such as the eastern shore of Lake Ontario, you could expect maybe a little bit around 6 inches of snowfall just from the lake effect snow associated with this low pressure system alone. However, outside those areas, it shouldn't be that much snowfall. For northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin, it should mainly be right around an inch, 1 to 3 inches of snowfall. So like I said, not much. Taking a look at the GFS models forecast at around that time period, like I said, mainly around 1 to 3 inches of snowfall for the interior portions of upstate New York, much of Vermont, New Hampshire, and even into Maine. So not much, but still something you want to be aware of for your morning commute. And of course, in the higher, or at least right up along the Great Lakes, it should be a little bit more than that. This would be better to take a look at the total snowfall for this scenario because this should be more. This event should last for more than 24 hours right up along the Great Lakes, and as you can clearly see, this could easily dump over 6 inches of snowfall right up along the higher elevations of the Adirondacks. So you definitely at least want to be aware of that possibility in those areas. And in terms of winter storms that could happen even more in the long-term future, we do have this potential Midwest and maybe Northeast winter storm that the GFS model wants to develop in the very long-term future, where it does bring heavy snowfall right over the Midwest into the Great Lakes region, and this impacts the bigger cities of the Midwest as well, like Chicago, Des Moines, Iowa, Milwaukee, Detroit, Cleveland, all get involved, Buffalo gets involved, as well as much of the interior Northeast. So this would be very impactful for millions of Americans if this were to come for fruition. There's still a lot of time for the forecast to iron itself out. Of course, the big question will be how strong this ridging will be, and that's still so far out to really determine that. And so it's definitely good to take this forecast with a grain of salt. I'll certainly keep you guys updated once we get a bit more certainty with this forecast. But what's interesting is that the European model is also forecasting somewhat of a similar scenario when it comes to that specific snowstorm that would happen later during the month of March. So moving forward with the forecast, we see it develops in a similar fashion, but the key difference is that the European model does move quite a bit northward. So this is mainly exclusively a Midwest threat, bringing heavy snowfall, more specifically right over Wisconsin and Michigan. But it's at least interesting that the European model is forecasting a similar type storm system to develop in a very similar fashion, where we see that classic mid-latitude cyclone look, that bow echo look that would really show how powerful a storm system is. And it develops it at around the same time period as the GFS model. So I think there could be validity with this forecast that we could see our next major winter storm right around the March 5th through 6th time frame. So at least keep an eye on this over the Midwest and even as far east as the Northeast and the East Coast in general, because there could be that possibility of severe weather on the southern side of this storm. So definitely keep that in mind in those areas, and I'll keep you guys updated once we get more certainty with that forecast. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.